I was familiar with the Michael Curtiz film of Mildred Pierce, and it was John Raymond, my co-writer of an adapter on our miniseries, who had been urging me to read the novel, and I finally got around to reading it in the summer of '08, just as the financial markets were starting to collapse in the United States and then everywhere else. And this book was so much more concerned with the economic realities of the Depression years than I remember the film being. And it felt so relatable to our lives at that time. And it also lent itself to a long-form adaptation, I felt. It spanned a decade in the Depression, and it also entailed events that were completely eliminated from the original film adaptation, like Vida's eventual ascent into becoming a coloratura soprano, and Mildred fated to basically get her wish for her daughter's future, but it would be a wish that would guarantee Mildred's excommunication from Vida's life. That was just too interesting a development narratively and to not want to include. So for many reasons, it felt like material that hadn't been explored, especially in this long form.
You even made a decision to include some of Roosevelt's speeches in the piece, and they really sound something that is so pertinent to Americans' contemporary economic crisis. So
yeah, I wish we had a Roosevelt right now. I think when you think in terms of feature filmmaking, you think about condensing, and the result is this rich tradition of genre that we look to as a sort of formal, example of how to condense a crime drama into a feature experience. And I love the generic traditions, and it's something that my films have explored, and I learn from them each time I attempt it. This was so different because it didn't have the same constraints of condensing. It was about opening up the experience over time. And so it really was more like the experience of reading a novel, where you feel like you're kind of living through something, rather than having this sort of almost dream experience where everything's condensed into an object. This is more like the kind of subtleties and nuances of real life, and it made sense that it would be something people would experience in their homes, on their televisions. Vida kind of stands in for, it's almost like she's the demon seed lurking inside this American middle-class dream of upward mobility. It's like it's at the root of the American dream, to move up in class and to have your children have more benefits and more advantages than you did, and yet there's a problem with that if it becomes excessive. And there's a problem with the mother-daughter love if it becomes excessive. So rooted in very natural, normal American values are these potential dangers that we see played out into extremes in the story. So I like that about it. So it felt like something we all had a stake in. It wasn't just some crazy, exception. She actually registered as a fault line in values that we all share. The look of the film, Ed and I shot, Ed shot I'm Not There as well, and we started working together on Far From Heaven, and they're all extremely different looking films with different sort of stylistic references. For me, and it was sort of the way we began talking about it, I was looking at a lot of the films from the 1970s. Because I was interested in, since I was adapting this classic novel, I was interested in how those films, classic genre films from the 70s, all of the greats that we all return to, like The Godfather and Chinatown and Klute and The Exorcist, they're all genre films, but they brought a sense of the contemporary time to their stories, and you felt like they were actually speaking about our lives today. And I was curious about how visually those films sort of changed their generic traditions. So we looked at those films, and we noticed, you know, how there was a relaxation. There wasn't this sort of intense stylization you associate with noir, for instance. The camera is more objective, more observation.